Hi everyone, welcome to After Class.
A podcast by two passionate adult ballerinas about all things adult ballet related.
And some random thoughts in between.
We're so glad you're here.
So grab your water bottle
or a cup of coffee
and join us for a quick chat after class.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of After Class. Today we are going to be talking about how to know if you are ready to go on pointe. So we're going to talk about physical readiness, technical readiness, and then this is actually going to be a two-part episode. So in the next episode, we'll get into more of the tips for getting ready for your pointe journey. So let's get into it. Hello, Yelena.
Hello, Hannah. How are you doing today?
Good. Today we are good. Ready to talk about pointe. I love talking about pointe.
I know. This episode, we actually decided to make it 2 episodes because we knew that we were going to just talk so much because we love these topics so much.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. I think something that I love about this podcast is how we can do very conversational topics and more up to trend, like the last one where we talked about social media and ballet, and also the technical part of how to know that you're ready to go to pointe work. Pointe work is not just sliding your beautiful pointe shoes and stepping on and be like, oh, hey, I'm a ballerina. No, there's so much more behind the scene, right?
Yeah, and there's so many things that aren't obvious about knowing if you're ready. I think people, especially if you are a beginner or if you haven't done ballet, I think a lot of people would look at a ballet dancer on pointe shoes and think, oh, you have really strong feet. But there's so much more than just foot strength. And so that's what we're going to talk about is all the other components.
Yeah, definitely. So I will say, as we said at the beginning of the episode, we're going to divide it by different points. And the first one is let's talk about your physical readiness. Let's go to foot and ankle strength. Obviously, that's the basic, that's your foundation, that's the scaffolding of your entire foot pointe work in the future. You need to make sure that can you rise on your releves as high as you can. Also, you need to follow in a straight line between middle toe, your ankle, all the way up to the shin and to the knee. Now, if you didn't know all this, it's time that you start researching a little bit and you start asking a little bit because pointe work is really difficult and there is a lot of cons with it. You can hurt your ankles, your knees, your hips just from elevating onto the pointe with the wrong alignment. So we need to make sure that we go with a strong ankle and then a strong foot all the way to your releve before you can even consider getting to your pointe work.
It's like you said, it's just the foundation for all of your work on pointe. Start at the bottom and move up our bodies. So feet, ankles, and then I think the next one is core. And this is one of those, like I said at the beginning, that I think maybe people wouldn't necessarily think of when you're assessing readiness is core strength. But really just in ballet in general, our core is so fundamental to our strength and our alignment and the way that we engage and use our bodies. The way that we engage and use all of our limbs, so arms and legs, is directly influenced by the strength of our core and how we're utilizing our core. So that's a huge one for pointe readiness.
Something that I keep always saying to all of my students is if you feel that you're a little bit wobbly, you already stretched your legs, you already kept your pelvis forward, you chin up, proud chest, really focus on your core. Engage your core. It's in the center of your body for a reason. It's right there in the center to control upper and lower body, or at least to help to keep it controlled. Remember that going into pointe work, you are really literally stepping on your tiptoes. So try to use your core as that essential main thing. If anything is wobbling, just engage core muscles. And for that, there's so many exercises that we're actually going to talk about it in episode 2. But Pilates, yoga, and just simple core exercises that we can do at home. I have seen a lot of students doing great in ballet. However, the legs are super strong. They have great releves, good tendies, but they can't do a good balance on passé just because the upper body have been overseen.
Yeah.
Like your core is the one that controls that upper body that actually needs to be really coordinated and engaged to keep all that control and balance.
So important. I feel like most of the time, if I am having a hard time stabilizing myself in susu or just releves in general on point, when I'm kind of running through the mental checklist, it's that I didn't engage my core. And as soon as I think about creating that engagement, it's like your whole body kind of clicks into more stability. So that is such an important one for point work.
Another point from this physical readiness is the legs and the legs alignment that I was talking about. So for my students, I have been teaching them for this last term that we did, or in Australia, we finished the year and we're going to start the next scholar year now in February. So for the last year, I worked with my pre-point classes. And the main thing that we had to focus was on teaching them the alignment of as you rise up and you lower down just on your demi-point shoes or on your flats, going up and down without wobbling your ankles and having a really good alignment between what I mentioned, middle toe all the way to your shin, all the way to your knee, all the way to your hips. That needs to have a perfect alignment and really well controlled and engaged. And that means calves, quads, inner thighs, and all the little glutes muscles that support the hip flexors and your quads and your thighs.
Yeah, glutes is, that's such an important one too. And I think going back to ankles, something you said made me think of this. Like it's easy to do even not in point shoes, even just on demi point. But once you get in point shoes, it will usually make it even more pronounced if you tend to pronate or kind of roll out from your ankles. You really want to, like you said, focus on making sure that your ankles are in that straight line, because a lot of us, even just when we walk, we tend to pronate or roll in either away from the center of our body or towards the center of our body. And those types of habits will just be more exaggerated once you go up on point shoes. So the alignment part is just so key. Like I know when I first started going on point, I saw a physio and I was kind of rolling out from my ankles. And so she gave me an exercise where I put a soft ball between my ankles and I just do releves, not even in point shoes, just in my slippers, doing releves, holding a soft ball between my ankles so that I had to focus on that ankle engagement. And that seems like such a simple exercise, but once you get up on point, that alignment, like you said, just becomes absolutely critical for safety.
It is very, very, very important, extremely important. And having that strength, that alignment, it has to be combined with flexibility, which is another important physical part of trying to get ready for point or recognizing whether you're ready to start point. By flexibility, we mean you don't just work on a strength, but you need to stretch. You need to make sure that your ankles are flexible enough so you have the mobility and the range of motion that you need in order to get to point. You need to make sure that you train with your third bend, not just for strength, but you actually stretch your toes, you stretch your arch, you stretch your ankle. And that's something that us as a teacher try to combine very often on those pre-point classes. The flexibility and the strength at the same level. It's not one more than the other one. It's so important.
Yep, that is a very important one too, because like you said earlier, it's like you're literally going up on your toes. And so you have to have the range of motion and the mobility for your foot to even bend that way, and if you're very new to just ballet in general, so you haven't even been doing tendus for very long, doing tendus is not something that normal people really do in day-to-day life. Like we're using our feet in a very different way. I heard someone say, like this is so true, that ballet dancers really, we use our feet more like hands. Like the level of articulation and the level of
So much true, right?
mobility, flexibility, articulation. Our goal is to make our feet operate more like hands, whereas the average person doesn't need that level of mobility in their feet. So you really have to prepare for that.
Yeah. And there is this very famous, I don't know if anyone heard about it yet, but there is a very famous exercise for getting ready for point, which is the piano toes. So you have to step, you can see that you can stand up, and you are meant to, as a training exercise for strength, you are meant to begin like little toe, second toe, third toe, middle toe, whatever. So you're meant to like almost play in a piano with your
Yeah.
toes one by one to create that independence of each toe from the other one. You need to straighten them all because they're all active.
Yeah.
And it's a funny exercise, and it's one of that costs so much time to actually coordinate and actually
It's
do
hard.
that exercise.
It is so much harder than you think it's going to be to move each of your toes in isolation. It's like one of those things that you're like, how is it possible that this is this difficult?
So much true. Now, let's say that you went through all this physical consideration of moving up to point. Now, let's go through the technical. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it takes years for us to let students. So, the first thing is minimum age for us to accept a student would be 12 years old. In a pre-point class, I think the pre-point class can take, they could start up to 10, but if they start on 10, they need to go over 2 years so they can get the point use around the age 12. And by having the age doesn't mean that they are physically ready yet, because some students can go to 12 years old and some muscles, some bones, articulations are not ready. Now, I know we are adults and all that, yet it might take even longer because we are getting older. It's a reality, and the muscles don't adapt as well. It hurts a little bit more going so often on your points, on your releve. So you might take more time for recovery and for training and for stretching. So, number one, make sure that you do pre-point exercises for as long as you can, as often as you can, before you start considering getting on point work.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's always hard to throw out generalizations because every person is different, but it maybe would be helpful. So, like, from the perspective of a teacher, what would you say, again, very general, would be the minimum amount of time that someone should be doing ballet on a consistent basis before they should even think about going on point? Like, say someone is going to class 2 to 3 times a week. What is like the minimum you would say?
If you are really invested and you're really going for a full, at least a full 6 months, 3 times a week, non-stop, like going every week for 6 months, you might be technically ready for it. And yet, this is a very long stretch that if someone comes to me and is like, oh, I have taken ballet classes for first time, but I did it for 3 days in a week for 7 months, I might have to see you in classes with me in private at least twice to make sure that the decision that I took for first class, it wasn't, oh, she actually worked great. No, I need to make sure in second class that, yeah, you actually have the technique. It wasn't that it was a good day for you. It was good technique. And that would be a long stretch. I will say, don't rush it. Take a solid 1 year of good training, good stretching. Make yourself aware of your body, how it moves, how it feels, how it will react to new techniques or different movements, because everything changes when you go to point. So just make sure that you're comfortable on your bar work, center work.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think like I said, it's so every person is so different, but I think sometimes a general ballpark can help people to know like, "Oh, I was thinking I couldn't get on point for 5 years." And it's like, "No, you can get on point." Or maybe some people are thinking, "Oh, I've taken 10 classes, like I should be good to go." So I think it's generalizations can be helpful when they break down extremes in thought.
Yeah, it's true. And it's also relative to everyone's bodies. And again, not the body, also the mental readiness, which we're going to be talking about that in episode 2. That's massive as well. Now, talking about the technical part of it, we need to make sure that your demi point work is really strong. You need to make sure that you feel that working on demi point, it's doable. Almost anything the teachers throw at you can do it. If you feel that that's fine and you actually, yeah, I could do a tombe, a pas de bourrée, I can do plie relevé, balance, 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 second position, the same. If you feel like jumping, allegros, the landings, your feet feel comfortable and you can handle that, that's a great sign that, oh, I might be able to actually go up and down on the point. So having that technical knowledge and awareness actually builds up to your point work in the future. Now, another point of this technical readiness will be control pliés and relevés. So now you know that your demi point work is strong. You can jump and you can work, and your tendues are really nice, and your relevés, then deep pliés. This is number one for jumping, for allegros. The landing is so important to control and do not injure yourself as you land on those. That's exactly the same for point work. Those strong pliés, meaning you're flexible, you are strong, you are not dropping your arches forward, you're actually controlling the arch. You're controlling hips, flexors. That goes back to your alignment from the physical readiness. So making sure that that's stable and that you feel that your debit place is actually fluid and strong is another sign that you might be ready to go to point work. However, my last tip for the technical readiness checklist will be follow or try to get the approval of a ballet teacher before you take any decision. I say this not because I want any other ballet teacher in the world to make any money out of you. That's not the idea. We are ballet teachers for a reason. We know, we can recognize when someone is ready to move up. We can give you some advices. We can give you some tips, some exercises. Even if you are ready, we say, yes, you're ready to move. But you should still do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And we could recommend you to people like Ali and say like, oh, your teacher said you were not ready 100%. You might be able to do this and this and this. And that will save you time, money, and probably a little bit of mental health as well.
Yeah, and physical for sure. I don't know, maybe this is controversial, but I don't think I would ever advocate someone going on point without the involvement of a teacher and physio. I think, especially as adults, most of us have some past injuries. We have different things that we're needing to consider. And I think doing it without any outside input from someone who really understands the physical demands that you're putting on your body is dangerous. I know it's hard because so much of ballet training is happening online now, and a lot of adults don't have an in-person teacher or studio, but you can still get a lot of the feedback about whether or not you're ready from an online teacher. Like, you're the one who I was training with who guided me in my point journey, and we've never met in person, but you were able to see, sometimes you'd have me put my laptop and my camera down on the floor so you can look. And then I actually went to like a special event through the Point shop with physios where they assess you. And, so there's different resources, even if you are training online, that you can reach out to specifically to assess your readiness. That's just not a judgment call that I would ever recommend anyone making without someone specifically having eyes on their body.
Yeah. Like I had my students we are like 4 different teachers doing in the same studio, pre-point classes with our own groups. And everyone, all of the teachers said to every student, we train for more than a year, I think we did with every group. And then we told all of them, you need to get the approval of the physio. We are going to recommend you first. If kids go through it and they are going to recover faster than us, they're still growing, they're still developing, why wouldn't we do it? Like, we are taking a higher risk than them at this point in life. Like,
Yeah.
once your ankle twist, that's not going back in a month, it's going back in like 3 to 4 months.
Those young ones, they just bounce back faster. So you gotta keep that in mind.
We don't bounce anymore. We fall and we stay down there until someone help us to stand up.
Oh my gosh, so true. I think this has been a really good full episode. Like we mentioned, we are going to do part 2, so definitely tune in next week for that. But hopefully this was helpful and gave you some concrete ideas for assessing your readiness. So we're going to keep the conversation going in part 2, and then we'll probably be releasing some sort of resource that'll go along with the episode. If you are pretty much only doing ballet, if you've been doing ballet only on YouTube for the last couple years and you don't have connection to a teacher that can actually assess you, you can contact Yelena for...
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to do that. Yay, thank you, Hannah.
Had to promote you because you weren't going to promote yourself, so I was like, I'm going to do it for her.
Thank you everyone so much always for listening. We definitely love all your support, and we're going to see you next week with part 2.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to After Class.
Join the community on YouTube and Instagram, or come dance with us in our weekly Zoom classes for adult ballerinas like you.
Links included in the episode description. Special thank you to our sponsors.
See you next time after class. Podcast produced by Mission Bridge Media.